Kim. Okay. Good morning, everyone. This is the Budget and Taxation Committee, Senate Budget and Tax. My name is Senator Gazzoni, the honor of chairing the committee. We have, looks like about 8 or 9 bills today that we're going to hear. The first up is Senate Bill 1, Senator Sigmar. This is very important legislation that we passed a version of this last year, and glad to see that you brought it back to us. Senator?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, Budget and Taxation Committee, as well as Education, Health, and Environmental Affairs Committee. Senator Sigmar here to testify on behalf of Senate Bill number 1. Before I get started, I want to thank you all first for your vote last session. I believe you have my written testimony, and I believe everyone is aware of the circumstances which have us here today. But for those of you who do not, it is the result of a suit which was filed in 2006 where Maryland was found to have engaged in intentional unconstitutional conduct. Then you had in 2013, the state or judge declaring that the state did engage in that unconstitutional conduct and then looking for a remedy. So by comparison, if this was a criminal trial, it would be correct to say that Maryland was found guilty of engaging in certain conduct. However, for whatever reason, the state since 2013, it has not fairly settled this lawsuit. This is what this bill is about. Again, as was mentioned last year, we had a unanimous vote come out of this body about a very similar bill. And I believe in the House, there were only 2 delegates who had voted against the bill. Unfortunately, our governor vetoed the work that we put into this. Hence, again, this is why we're here today. What I would like to do is just take a little bit of time just to speak to some recent arguments which I've heard floated around regarding why we can't pass this bill. There was an argument about affordability, especially during this time of COVID. And I asked this committee, and we'll ask this body to remember that this bill will not require Maryland to make its first payment until fiscal year 2023. There's only $57 million per fiscal year over the course of 10 years. And second, I just want to make it clear that this is not like an appropriation. This is a settlement in decades-long intentional conduct that the courts have said was worse than Mississippi. This is an offer to settle an outstanding litigation for intentional discrimination actions by our states over decades. When cases are settled, the court is not asked to consider whether or not the defendant can pay for the damages that it has caused. It evaluates the damages and orders the damages be paid. As a body, we put a framework together which the plaintiffs agreed was fair and that fell well within our means. Additionally, there has been another argument floated about Mackenzie Scott's grants to which 3 of our 4 HBCUs received. I would like to say first, thank you to Ms. Scott for recognizing the work that these institutions are doing in spite of this state's historic underinvestment within them, and to the institutions that have received the funding. Second, that investment has nothing to do with this settlement offer. Attempting to equate the two is like comparing apples to oranges. I would like to point back to why we're doing this. This settlement offer is meant to address unconstitutional acts of this state and end this now 15-year lawsuit so that the state does not face the possibility of a much larger settlement levied by the courts. This bill is essentially the same bill that you voted unanimously for last session, with a few exceptions, one being section 15-126, which deals with the allocations of the settlement amount. This new bill, what it does is it provides a floor of $9 million to be distributed to the universities over the course of the settlement term. In order to do that, we had Morgan as well as Bowie take reductions in funding that would have then benefited Coppin State University. And second, we had a settlement agreement language in there where the settlement agreement would have had to have been finalized in December of 2020. We changed that, so now the settlement agreement would have to have been met in June of 2021. So with that, I mean, that is the bill. Again, you have my written testimony, which goes through all of the history of how we got here. And with that, I ask both committees to please provide a favorable report on SB 1. And what I'll do, because I'm not certain if questions will be directed to me now or after the panel, but Mr. Chair, what I would like to do is have President Wilson speak, President Anderson then come after him, President Jenkins, President Rowe, and then to testify in that order. And then I've asked Michael Jones, who's the plaintiff's counsel, he'll be my lead witness to testify and conclude for us. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Senator. That's absolutely fine. The order is fine. Let me recognize, I guess I didn't do that at the beginning. I guess we have Senators Simon Ayer and Washington here from Economic Health and Environment who have joined us to participate in the hearing. We welcome you, and then now let us continue with President Wilson.
Good morning again to everyone, and Mr. Chair, thank you very much. I do understand we have 2 minutes, and so I will be very brief in my comments this morning. First of all, on behalf of the entire Morgan State University community, our current students, our alumni, our faculty, our staff spread all over the world, I would like to express our appreciation to Senator Sigmar for once again bringing this bill forward. Let me say at the outset that Morgan is in full support of the passage of Senate Bill 1 that will indeed bring to an end a lawsuit that has been going on much too long, and the university has not benefited from it at all. We certainly here at Morgan are in the middle of an immense period of growth and momentum. We have grown our student body here quite significantly now to around 8,000 students. We have elevated our research mission from an R3 to an R2. We achieved that 2 years ago. And we will be unveiling our updated strategic plan in 2 weeks, where our goal over the next 10 years is to become an R1 research institution. And we would be, if we reach that destination, the first HBCU in the country to have that research destination. We would be focused almost exclusively on urban issues and on the intractable opportunities in Baltimore City. We are the only public comprehensive research doctoral university in our city. And so this settlement will enable us to continue with, it will enable us to continue to mount what Judge Catherine Blake asked us to do, which is to put in place unique high demand programs and particular research foci that cannot be duplicated. We've already started that. We have instituted the only baccalaureate degree program in our state in cloud computing. We have instituted the only baccalaureate degree program in our state and one of the few in the nation in mechatronics engineering, a PhD program in embedded systems. And this particular settlement is going to enable us to sustain those programs and grow those programs in the way that Judge Blake has indicated. And so in my testimony that we submitted, we outlined the historical underfunding of HBCUs in our state, sadly enough, dating back 83 years. And I'm not going to walk you through that, but that is in front of you. And so what I would just simply like to say once again, Senator Sigmar, Mr. Chair, is that Morgan State University is more than 100% supportive of Senate Bill 1. We urge you to pass it. And of course, we appreciate the investment that the governor made in Morgan this past year along this path where we are instituting a Center for Health Equity here. But this is just the beginning, and we want to continue to build on that and push Morgan State University into the top echelons of major urban research universities in the United States of America.
Thank you, Mr. President. Whoever was next on that list that Senator Sigmar presented.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, everyone. I am President Anderson, and it is a pleasure to be here, both to our chair and to the vice chair and all the members of this committee and to the Education Policy Committee. On behalf of all of our students and faculty and our 18,000 alumni, I am very honored to be here today, and thank you for having me. I know that we have a very short time. You have a copy of my testimony, so I'll be very brief. And let me just say, first of all, MES, we are also in favor of this particular bill. We appreciate last year that you passed this, and we appreciate that the House also passed it, and that it is cross-referenced in the House this year. We also want to ask you again to please vote favorably for this. But let me briefly tell you what this bill will do for us. First of all, similar to Morgan, right at this time, we are a Carnegie Research Institution, the only Carnegie Research Institution on the Eastern Shore. Our focus is in rural areas. We are strong in healthcare, we are strong in agriculture. And those areas we work to really help our farmers and the healthcare needs here on the Eastern Shore. This particular bill, passage of it, will help strengthen our programs in several areas. First of all, scholarships for my students. Second, academic program enhancements. Third, marketing and recruitment. And 4, capital projects. Let me hit on a couple of points for you to understand. From the academic standpoint, we are the only HBCU in the country that has as many health programs as we have. We have 8 health profession programs. We have added a physician assistant program just this last year. In the midst of COVID, we added that program to our mix. We are the only one of 4 HBCUs in the country that has a physician assistant program. We are only one of 6 HBCUs in the country that has a pharmacy program. The mix of those will allow us to not only expand and handle the healthcare disparities here within the Eastern Shore, but also throughout the state. This bill would allow us to add new academic programs. We are interested in and have the desire to add a veterinary science program. This would position the University of Maryland Eastern Shore to really have the only official veterinary science program in the state of Maryland. And we are positioned very proudly to be able to handle and do that. We work with farmers now. We have a small farm, and the things that we could do to expand that and to grow would be phenomenal. Scholarships for our students. Our students direly need scholarships. When I became president 3 years ago, my mantra and my motive is scholarships, scholarships, scholarships. I need those for my students. I have no full scholarship for any student on the campus. This would also allow us to add marketing and recruitment to help us bring in students. What we have found in COVID, and I can tell you this, any of the institutions here today and throughout the country, COVID has caused a decrease in the number of students who are coming to our campuses. We have to reverse that. And with marketing and better recruitment tools, we'll be able to do that. And last, the other area is capital construction. When I arrived here 3 years ago, our library was closed. Imagine that. I told this body that last year, a university with a library that has to be closed because of the flooding that happens on our campus on a routine basis. And it has damaged much of our buildings. Our deferred maintenance has not kept up. So a large part of what I would do with this is to make sure that we correct that in our buildings, in our dorms, in addition to adding into the other spaces that we need. Finally, we urge you to please help our students. and help the future students by voting favorably again for this particular bill. And I promise you, we will be very, very judicious in making sure we follow through and get the new programs that will help the citizens of Maryland. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam President. Whoever's next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, Mr. Chair and members of the committee, good morning. And thank you for this opportunity to provide an oral statement regarding Senate Bill 1. On behalf of the entire Coppin State University community, we deeply appreciate your strong and continued support of higher education, and especially our 4 HBCUs. You know, Coppin is a small university that provides its students a large university experience. Our students come from across Baltimore City, 28 states to include the District of Columbia, and 19 countries. We are a destination of choice for high-skilled students from all backdrops. And we are extremely proud of our rich storied history and how we have positioned ourselves as a leader in urban higher education. The sincere intent of my testimony is to not only encourage the passing of Senate Bill 1, but to also ensure that the legislation fosters an authentic framework for Coppin to address the past inequalities it has faced. I wish for all of our 4 HBCUs to thrive, and therefore I want to ensure that we circumvent any situations that hinders our success. But I'm also encouraging and challenging us to give strong consideration to Coppin's mission, to access and opportunity, as well as the students that we educate. No other institution in this state educates a higher federal Pell recipient student population than Coppin, a population that requires more resources and more academic wraparound services to graduate these students and get them over the finish line. Our nursing program has the highest pass rate of any HBCU in this state. We are doing groundbreaking research in organic synthesis and nanotechnology. We are partnering with major industries right here in our state and across the nation. Coppin is poised to continue to do great things. My hope is that the structure of this bill will afford Coppin the opportunity to elevate its competitiveness, sustainability, and relevancy. You have an opportunity to help us do that. So I am encouraging you to support the passing of this legislation. On behalf of my faculty, my incredible students, my staff, and my alumni, and the Baltimore community that we serve, I thank you for your time and your support.
Thank you, Mr. President. President Bro.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Chair Guzzoni, Vice Chair Rosapep, and committee members. For this opportunity, I thank you so very much for the opportunity to comment on Senate Bill 1. As president of Bowie State University, the first historically Black college and university in the state of Maryland, I speak on behalf of our entire campus community in support of Senate Bill 1, which would resolve long-standing litigation over the issues of de jure segregation in Maryland's public higher education system. I applaud Senator Sidnor and members of the legislature for hearing our voices in a time when HBCUs require greater resources and support more than ever, as the economic impact of the novel coronavirus continues to spread and impact on the resources normally afforded to teaching, research, and the support of the learning process. BSU has extraordinary faculty, staff who are dedicated, and they are continuing to dedicate themselves to ensuring BSU delivers on our promise in affording access to a quality educational experience. It is a testament to them that our enrollment and retention remain strong, but without additional support, especially during these challenging times and the uncertainty that lies ahead, I'm greatly concerned we will lose ground to fulfill the need for the workforce and for our communities where our students and our graduates contribute to the economic engines. Our HBCUs are a source of talented and bright individuals who can help lift up our economy if we are able to continue to provide the learning and the credentials business and industry needs, or to help them create their own businesses and products through our entrepreneurial initiatives that BSU is very much known for in helping our students to develop an entrepreneurial mindset. We are working diligently to provide new programs to meet industry and business needs, including new stackable credentials, badges, certificates. And we currently have 14 certificates, but as you see, the world is changing rapidly. We need to remain competitive. We are seeking the support for Bowie State University to meet our obligations to provide access to a quality educational experience for our students and the ability to develop the workforce and enrich our communities. Support of this bill is support for the viability of the state of Maryland and our economic engines, where our students, they study, our graduates live and work. On behalf of Bowie State University, our students, faculty, and staff, and alumni, I thank the members of the General Assembly, this committee, for your support, and I urge a favorable report for Senate Bill 1. Bowie State University is growing. We are thriving. We have the largest increase in the first year full-time enrollment. Our enrollment increased in 1 year by 20% for our new students coming in. That tells you about the demand that is out there for Bowie State University and the valuing of our educational product. But we cannot do this alone. We need your support, and our businesses and industries and our students and families, especially as they face great uncertainty, they need support. Again, in closing, I fully support Senate Bill 1. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. I think next up is Mr. Jones.
Yes, good morning, Mr. Chairman, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. My name is Mike Jones, and I'm a partner at Kirkland & Ellis LLP and a member of the Executive Committee of the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights. The Lawyers Committee was founded when President Kennedy called to the White House the leaders of the private bar to get them involved in civil rights litigation, recognizing that sometimes the government can't do it and that you need the resources, the skills, and the talents of the private bar. So in that regard, I've been involved in this case since 2009, working with the Lawyers Committee. And in closing argument to Judge Blake, I gave 2 closing arguments, one in 2013 and another in 2017, after the court held that Maryland was not serious about providing a remedy for the schools. And I said to the judge, really speaking as much as an HBCU graduate as I was a lawyer, that Judge, I said, remember that Maryland fought against the implementation of the Brown decision for 15 long years. They fought it tooth and nail, but after they finished fighting it, after they lost, they came to embrace the Brown decision. I predicted to the judge that the same would be true here. The state has fought us longer, harder, and with more resources than any case in my 34-year career. And the same is true for the Lawyers Committee. But I predicted to the judge in 2017 that over time, the state will look back at this decision the same way it will look back at the Brown decision. It will be good for the schools, it'll be good for the state, and it will set a shining example for the rest of the country. And that's why I'm so proud to have been a part of this case and so proud to testify in front of this committee and to have worked with Senator Sigmar for the last several years to try to get this done. Thank you for your vote last year, and I look forward to your vote this year and look forward to answering whatever questions you have of me.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Questions from the committee? Yes, Senator Griffith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning again, colleagues from B&T and from EHE. First, I want to thank the sponsor and the panelists for their presentation. I think they captured the history and the need for this bill that passed unanimously out of the committee. I raised my hand because I actually have an amendment, colleagues, that I was not able to get to you today, but I wanted to mention it so that you have it for your consideration, and we'll figure out how we get it electronically to everyone in the days to come. And basically, I wanted to say to the chairman and to the panel, the amendment makes no changes to the bill as it was presented, and the content and the formulas that have been described that I know that have been carefully thought out, hard negotiated over time, and will bring what we've all been looking for, which is an end to this longstanding lawsuit. What the amendment does, colleagues, is it basically offers a potential funding source. As you all know, in the state, we receive revenue from the Cigarette Restitution Fund, a litigation process that we've been dealing with for over 20 years. I remember when I was first hearing about it in the House back in the 90s. And so what you may not know is that there are it's a multifaceted litigation. And so the funds that we see in the budget every year that we've been allocating, that's only one part of the litigation. There are other cases that are being heard that could potentially bring revenues to the state of Maryland. And so what the amendment does is it establishes a special account so that if we receive this settlement that is based on the current litigation happening around the cigarette restitution funds, the governor would use those resources to supplant the general funds needed to pay the HBCUs their allocation, as much as there are funds available in that account. And one of the reasons that I offer this is there's no question, it's even on the Center for Disease Control's website, about the historic targeting of minority communities around tobacco sales through campaigns that use language and culture, that use, hip hop and nightclub sounds and video to promote tobacco sales in minority communities. And also there were targeted mail campaigns. And so that's a part of what's being litigated right now. It just makes sense to me that if some resources come to the state, that we are able to set those aside and use them so that we're able to relieve the general fund a little bit when those resources get put in that account. So I just wanted to mention that that amendment is forthcoming, and just simply urge our committee's continued support of this legislation, Senate Bill 1, that we get it moved through the body as we did last year. Thank you for allowing me to present that, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator. And yes, we'll be moving this as quickly as we can. Very important. And so it's been a good hearing. Senator Peters.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to know what the appropriate time would be to co-sponsor the bill. I know because of COVID, it's really tough to get co-sponsors. So just wanted to put that marker down whenever you think it's a good time to do a co-sponsor amendment.
Fair enough. We'll bring it up, I think, probably when we get to the voting session.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, you bet. All right, seeing no one else, I want to thank everybody for their participation today, and we'll move on to the next bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Senate Bill 261, Senator Simon Ayer, Anne Arundel County Property Tax Credit for Business Entities, State of Emergency.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Assuming you can hear me?
Yes.
Great. I respect your time, so this will be very brief. This is just a local Anne Arundel County bill. It simply enables the county to provide a property tax credit for businesses during a state of emergency, and then it sets up the framework for it. We will have a delegation meeting on it and report back to you, and that is the bill, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Any questions? No other witnesses. Thank you very much, Senator. Outstanding job. Love those kind of hearings. Senate Bill 18, Senator Alfred, Income Tax Subtraction Modification School Supplies for Home Instruction and Virtual Learning Programs.
Senator, he's not here yet. He was supposed to be here. You want to go to Senator Alfred?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Senate Bill 30, Senator Alfred, State Finance and Procurement Appropriation Reductions, Board of Public Works Budget Reduction Clarification Act.
That's quite a title. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning.
It certainly is.
It's a big title for hopefully a short and sweet bill. Thank you, members of the committee, and Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice Chair. Senator Sarah Alfred here to present Senate Bill 30, which we've shortened to the BPW bill in my office. This bill is an update to legislation this committee and this body passed in 2016 to bring greater transparency and accountability to the BPW process. When we are not in session, the 9 months where they have the ball, per se, during the interim and have the ability to make budget decisions. So the bill does three things, and I'll just briefly walk through them. Number one, it requires the BPW provide advance public notice of any cuts within 10 business days. Currently, the law reads 3 business days. So when we have a BPW meeting on Wednesday, that agenda is published on the Friday prior, creating quite a scramble, as we all experienced, particularly this interim, where the governor proposed necessary but significant budget cuts back in July. We've received a list of those cuts on a Friday morning, creating a whole lot of folks trying to reach out to their partners, reach out to members of BPW and advocate for or against those cuts. We believe that 3 days is just not enough, and you're going to hear from some panelists today to explain why some greater time is appropriate for transparency and accountability. Number two, the bill clarifies the BPW can reduce a total of 25% over the course of a fiscal year, not 25% every time the board meets. So the 2016 bill put that 25% number in. There's a little just confusion as to whether that means over the entire year or at every meeting of the BPW. We want to clarify that that means for the course of the year. And lastly, it clarifies that the BPW can reduce 25% of a line item. I know we're going to hear from some opposition today that does not provide enough flexibility to the BPW to make budget decisions. I would resist that argument, because when we get to more than 25%, frankly, very, very liberal for the BPW. The budget decisions should remain in this body and with the General Assembly, and reducing line items or programs by more than 25% would drastically change those programs and change the mission. If that's going to happen, I believe that should be under the auspices of the General Assembly and not under the BPW. So final note, this is not a partisan bill. Governors and multiple BPWs of different political stripes have cut more than 25%. The prior administration, for instance, during the Great Recession, and that lastly, the 25% is still provides wide budget authority to the BPW when the legislature is not in session. So again, I think this is good for the public trust in our system, good for participation in our system, and clarifies the 2016 legislation. So Mr. Chair, thank you for your time, and I request a favorable report of Senate Bill 30.
Thank you, Senator. First up, I guess you didn't really have a panel, right? So we'll move just in order. First up, Senator Brinkley, Secretary Brinkley, called me earlier today and expressed regrets he wouldn't be able to be here today, but I know that his deputy, Martin Cole, is here.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman.
Good morning. Good morning. I'm sorry, I'm getting a lot of feedback. I don't know if somebody's got their everybody can put their mutes on. Go ahead.
Okay. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Mark Nicole. I'm the Deputy Secretary of the Department of Budget and Management. Secretary Brinkley sends his regrets. He has taken his fiancee to a medical appointment this morning. DBM opposes Senate Bill 30, and you have our detailed written testimony. I will not go into that. I will highlight our objections. There are 2 parts of the bill we would like to talk to today: a 10-day advance notice versus a 3-day advance notice that we are currently under, and a restriction to 25% of any line item versus an appropriation. This bill micromanages how things happen when the issue is that it needs to happen in the first place, which generally no one likes. When we have to take these cuts, obviously, we are in very difficult fiscal circumstances. Making mid-year reductions is already a daunting and challenging task, and the bill unnecessarily causes further bureaucratic delay. Standard & Poor's in their rating report to the state this year noted that the state's continued practice of making proactive mid-year adjustments to align the budget in case of slower than anticipated revenue growth will remain an important credit factor over the 2-year outlook horizons. The other 2 rating agencies have similarly chimed in, applauding Maryland for having sufficient checks and balances through the BPW process to deal with unforeseen circumstances during the mid-year and acting in an expeditious and responsible manner. Pages 3, 4, and 5 of our written testimony highlight details and timelines regarding the 10-day advance notice. The second issue I'd like to discuss today is restricting reduction authority to 25% of any line item. This is tremendously cumbersome by forcing DBM and agencies to make a greater number of smaller reductions rather than more substantial changes to fewer programs. I would argue that it may be better not to start a new program, likely preserving existing programs. However, this level of micromanagement, a new program can only be reduced 25%, and existing programs get the same attention, which quite possibly might be destructive. In fact, typically we are trying to preserve resources for programs that work and look to do a haircut to something new or not nearly as effective. The language forces across the board reductions to all programs, including those that work well. Mr. Chair and members of the committee, no one proposes mid-year reductions because they are desirable. Quite the contrary, they are proposed out of a necessity to preserve those items determined to have a higher priority and that are working. The professionals in this agency and in other state agencies take this quite seriously, the responsibility to analyze the totality of the $49 billion budget, and we make every effort to minimize the negative impact of budget reductions on state government. That concludes our testimony, and we would request a unfavorable on the bill.
Thank you. Questions?
Thank you. Questions?
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Actually, Mr. Nicole, it might be your setup that's causing the feedback. Oh, wait. Senator Zucker has a question.
Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The raise hand feature is not accessible right now, stated, but Mr. Nicole, thank you for being here. I had a question for the legislation that passed several years ago that would have given an updated notice or changed the time frame. Where were you all on that? Are you favorable or opposed to changing the time that people?
So I think when the legislation. When the legislation was changed in 2016, the original legislation was for a 10-day notice. We were opposed to the 10-day notice, and we agreed to the 3-day notice. We do believe that has worked well. I would sort of note, as in our testimony, when we started the process for the Board of Public Works meeting for July 1st, when we went to go and meet with the comptroller and treasurer, we started with about $750 million through discussions with them. That was reduced down to about $610 million. That was what was first published on the board's website on the Friday before the hearing. Based upon feedback that we received from the comptroller, the treasurer, and other parties, we reduced that item down to $395 million. So we would say the notification process works. We've done it 6 times, and no one has sort of pointed out to us why that process has not worked or why it's not been, why it needs to be changed.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Sarah, Mickey?
Good afternoon, Chair Gazzoni and Vice Chair Rosapep and members of the committee. I'm Sarah Mursky, Deputy Director of the Baltimore Jewish Council, which represents the Associated Jewish Community Federation of Baltimore and all of its agencies. I'm here today to give our support for SB 30, which would both limit BPW's ability to reduce operating budget items by a maximum of 25% per line item and increase the number of business days from 3 to 10 that BPW must wait to publish notice before approving a proposed reduction. Both of these measures are important to the nonprofit agencies that the Baltimore Jewish Council represents. When planning annual budgets, our agencies do take into account their state funding. By limiting this power to 25% of the total line item appropriation, our social service organizations can better plan how to use their funding to the clients they serve. Further, SB 30 would give us more time to form a response and advocate against proposed cuts by increasing the number of notice from 3 to 10 days. This is especially important to us as a Jewish organization, since currently notice is given on Fridays, meaning that we only have a few hours on Friday to begin to get organized to form a response if there are a proposed cut to one of our programs that we support. And we also miss the day of advocacy because it's during Shabbat. This is best shown by a real example from over the summer. Over the summer, the governor proposed a cut to a program important to our community, security funding for religious institutions that are at risk of hate crimes. We had to scramble to get 3 different Jewish organizations to approve the language and to sign on to a letter asking the governor to withdraw his cut. I don't know if you've ever had to get several organizations to approve a sign-on letter, and also if they're nonprofits to get their boards to approve that letter as well, but getting that done in virtually a few hours is almost impossible. Having extra days to work with the governor and other members of BPW to advocate against or limit a cut would have been and would be in the future beneficial to all advocacy organizations, but especially those like ours that have religious constraints. And for these reasons, we ask for a favorable report on SB 30. Thank you.
Thank you. I think I missed Senator Griffith before. I don't know if the staff, I don't know if the feature is working, the hand raise feature is working. It was.
Yeah, I had it, Mr. Chairman. I did have it, and then when I thought I missed my opportunity, so I took it back down.
Okay.
But if I could,
It appears, I'm hearing from another member and just the staff, if this can be rectified somehow, that the hand raise feature somehow is not available to all members. If we can work on that, if that's possible. Thanks. Go ahead, Senator.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'm not sure who best to answer it. It might be Mr. Nicole, it might be the sponsor or the previous presenter. I may have missed this in the presentation, but I actually had 2 questions for Mr. Nicole. I was wondering if the issue was the 25%. I thought I heard him say 25% like haircut, but I might have misheard that. And then I was curious if I know Maryland's budget process is unique and we're about to make changes moving forward, but are we aware of any other states that have these kind of provisions?
Good morning, Senator. So our issue is with the 25% reduction to a line item, not the 25% over the course of the year. And I do believe that our process to make reductions through the Board of Public Works is probably unique amongst all the states.
I thought so. Thank you. And because I'll try to reach out to him offline, Mr. Chairman, for my other. I'm good.
Very good. Thank you. All right. Lance Kilpatrick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Budget and Taxation Committee members. For the record, my name is Lance Kilpatrick. I'm the Legislative and Political Director for AFSCME Council 3. I've submitted my written testimony to just briefly go over it. This summer, clearly, we were faced with some enormous ramifications of the governor's perceived budget crisis to eliminate over $600 million from the existing fiscal year budget. With only a few days to react to the specifics of those proposals, we scrambled into place and felt we did okay. I cannot imagine how community leaders and nonprofits like Sarah referenced with hers have the time and the ability to actually do an analysis that allows them to make an informed response. So we definitely are very favorable of this legislation. We think that the 25% reduction applying to line items frankly ensures that programs funded by the General Assembly are not indiscriminately eliminated, and extending the amount of time from 3 business days to 10 business days allows Marylanders, who are the ultimate stakeholders of state governance and not a bureaucracy that needs to be addressed, it gives them the opportunity to have their voices heard. So AFSCME Council 3 asks for a favorable report of this legislation. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions on this bill? I don't see anybody waving or any hand raise features or anything. So thank you all very much. We're going to move on to the next bill. We have Senator Hoff with us now. Is Senate Bill 18, Income Tax Subtraction Modification of School Supplies. Senator?
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Senate Bill 18 deals with really the effect of lockdowns and school closures from the pandemic, and parents now being directly tasked with overseeing and paying for school supplies for their children. Not that they didn't already, but anyone who, you know, I know myself, even as the parent of 3 children, we've built in my living room a workspace. We're all paying for enhanced Wi-Fi, and you know, there's additional cost on top of the cost of a lot of parents who had a 2-income household. Many are reduced to 1 now because they're watching the children and, you know, there. And so obviously it's causing more costs with school supplies, educational programs. Families are facing hardships right now from the pandemic. Costs everything from school supplies, desks, enhanced broadband. These additional costs are on top of the lost time for parents supervising children. This bill would address these problems by offering a temporary one-time, 1-year, $250 tax credit that parents can use to offset the cost of school supplies. This tax credit is traditionally given to teachers. So as you know, we've in the past enacted this for teachers when they pay out of pocket for school supplies, $250. So all this does is extend for 1 year that tax credit to parents. It's not just parents, I shouldn't say that too. If you look at the eligibility, it's for people who are providing these services. So it could even be grandparents who are watching them, who are buying school supplies. As the burden of education has shifted this year from the classroom to home, extending this to families is fair and makes sense. 8 states, by the way, offer this permanently. The fiscal note, I'll address really briefly on this, is $4.6 million, which if you look at a number of the stimulus packages that are being proposed, I mean, the governor's package is $1 billion, so 4.6 million is relatively small in comparison to a lot of what's being talked about as stimulus. And if you look at just some of the veto overrides that we've had or going to have, I just added up some real quick. Senate Bill 524, 907, 708, 929. It's almost $9 million in just overrides we're going to do. So I just sum up and say families are currently struggling to make ends meet while educating their children at home. As many of these economic hardships are the result of obviously the lockdowns and school closures, the least we can do in the Maryland General Assembly is provide them with some much needed relief. For all these foregoing reasons, I ask a favorable vote on Senate Bill 18. And lastly, I'll add one more last point. The fiscal note, in comparison to a lot of things we're looking at, is not large. I know people may think $250 may not be a big deal. I think it actually will be a great help to people right now who, I know all of you are like me, you're fielding calls from people that can't, you know, are struggling with unemployment, struggling to put food on the table. $250 could be the difference in being able to pay your Comcast bill, you know, to provide internet for your family. So, you know, so your kids can keep doing the schooling. So that's it.
Thank you, Senator. I don't believe anybody signed up on this one. Any questions for the Senator? Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Senate Bill 92, Senate Record Income Tax Credits for Preceptors in Areas with Healthcare Workforce Shortages, Eligibility, and Sunset Repeal. We got to work on the length of some of these bills titles.
It's a unique tax credit. Anyway, good morning, Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, Senator Addie Eckert here to present to you Senate Bill 92. You've seen this bill before. I think it was actually several years ago we passed it. It's truly a grow your own, and that means that each profession who provides the preceptor to make sure we have adequate physicians and nurse practitioners in the workforce contribute to the fund from which the credit is taken. But we needed some technical changes. It's been used, but there's always a little bit left in the kitty. So we want to extend that to other preceptors. They receive $1,000 per every student of 3 rotations of 100 hours. Currently, the legislation prescribes 160 hours, but actually 100 is what is standard. So we want to make that technical change and then remove the sunset so we can get more practitioners into the workforce. You will see some technical amendments offered by the Department of Health because they essentially are working through the mechanics of this. So I would accept those amendments as offered by the department and move favorable on this piece of legislation. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Senator. I don't believe anybody's signed up on this bill either. Any questions? Thank you very much. Senate Bill 123, Senator Young, Small Business Fairness Act.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Glad to be here. Already took care of 2 bills on another committee. The purpose of this act, and I'm sure you all know it because I've been before you several times with it, but I will go through it again, is to improve the fairness and competitiveness for Maryland small businesses and retail and food services. It requires combined reporting for multi-state retail and food service businesses. I would like to point out why I limited it to those 2. A number of businesses, particularly like biotech firms and whatever, have told me flatly that it would be very easy for them to move out of state, and they are very much opposed to this. And one of the things that the chamber always comes in with is that it could cause businesses to leave Maryland. Well, retail and restaurant businesses aren't going to leave Maryland. If they want to do business here, they have to be here. And they, I think, get to compete unfairly with small businesses. I will say, for example, in downtown Frederick, from a high-end coffee shop to high-end restaurants, we have about 70. They're all local. On the other hand, the larger corporations that own chains that are throughout the county transfer their taxes back to their home state where the corporation is, just as do companies like Walmart and Target and Nordstrom and others. And I think that is a very unfair advantage to small businesses, which always amazes me in that the chamber opposes this, and I thought they were here mostly for small businesses. But the estimated revenue gains of money we're losing that we would pick up without any extra cost to our local taxpayers because they're paying the taxes, they're just not coming to Maryland. The fiscal note presently shows that we'd gain about $18 million the first year and $60+ million a year every year after that. So I believe and have believed that that's revenue that's going out of state, should stay in Maryland, and it would, as I said, would not cost taxpayers any additional money. So again, I think it helps build a vibrant community by treating local restaurants, local shops more fairly. 28 states now have combined reporting, and it's not a political thing. They're blue states, they're red states. Texas, which is often listed as one of the best states in the country to do business, has combined reporting. So I would again ask for a favorable report on this bill. I'm willing to take questions.
Thank you, Senator. I'm going to keep moving on with those who've signed up. Sarah Price.
Hi, can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, it is now officially good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My name is Sarah Price, and I'm here on behalf of the Maryland Retailers Association. MRA has opposed this bill in the past and continues to oppose this bill, as combined reporting is not a consistent or reliable method for determining a multi-state business's income tax base. The Maryland Economic Development and Business Climate Commission has explicitly recommended against the implementation of combined reporting, and Moody's Analytics report has stated in the past that Maryland should be reducing costs for businesses and addressing its perception of business unfriendliness. I would respectfully respond to the sponsor and note that while retail and restaurants may not be able to just pick up and move across the border like a biotech business, if they are negatively impacted by a tax change to the point that they have to close, they will still close. This legislature has already closed several of what were seen as tax loopholes in recent years, including the single sales factor in 2018, which had a noticeably adverse effect on the retail industry. As we are now approaching the 1-year anniversary of the shutdowns due to COVID-19, it is clear that the economic repercussions of the pandemic restrictions are still going to be felt long after the last member of the general public has been vaccinated. Imposing an unreliable new tax structure that picks winners and losers, and in this case, specifically targets the industries that were hardest hit by the pandemic, is the last thing that we should be considering right now. We respectfully oppose this legislation and look forward to working with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Stephanie Du.
Hi, good afternoon. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Thank you. Chair Guzon and members of the committee, thank you again for your time, especially under these unusual circumstances that bring us together over Zoom. My name is Stephanie Doe. I'm a senior tax counsel at the Council on State Taxation, also known as COST. We are a nonprofit trade association based in Washington, D.C., with an independent membership of over 500 multi-jurisdictional businesses, many of which engage in retail and food and beverage services operations in Maryland. Our objective is solely to preserve and promote equitable and non-discriminatory state and local taxation of multi-jurisdictional businesses. Safe to say, we oppose this bill, and you all have my written testimony that details why we believe this bill should not move forward. So I would just like to use this time to urge you to look at Maryland's own Business Tax Reform Commission report, which in 2010 recommended that the General Assembly should not adopt mandatory unitary combined reporting. And there's 2 points in particular in that report that resonates still today more than ever before. First, the report states that combined reporting, and I quote, introduces uncertainty at a time when the economy is struggling to recover from a recent recession. I think it's very safe to say that this holds especially true today. And these are already uncertain times, and combined reporting only augments these uncertainties. And second, the report states that combined reporting shifts the tax burdens, resulting in winners and losers. This bill is targeted at retailers and the food service businesses. And these are the industries that are losing the most. due to the economic volatility caused by the pandemic. These negative impacts of the bill should not be added to the struggles of these businesses and as a result to Marylanders. On that note, I strongly urge this committee to issue an unfavorable report, and thank you again for your time.
Thank you. Melvin Thompson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Melvin Thompson. I represent the Restaurant Association of Maryland, and we oppose Senate Bill 123. This legislation targets the food service industry. The proposed formula would create an additional tax burden on some members of our industry, potentially increasing their Maryland tax liability through a computation method that includes income from non-Maryland locations. There is no basis for crossing state lines for tax purposes on income not related to Maryland transactions. Passage of this legislation would also discourage some restaurant groups from expanding into Maryland, especially given that new restaurants typically operate at a loss for the first couple of years as they pay off opening costs and find operational efficiencies. And this is of particular concern to us because of the devastating economic impact that the COVID pandemic has had on the food service industry. It is for these reasons that we oppose this legislation and request an unfavorable report. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions for anyone who's testified? All right. Thank you all very much. Moving on to Senate Bill 246, Senator Hester, Income Tax Angel Investor Tax Credit Program.
Senator, she's not here in the waiting room, but her Chief of Staff, Nathan, is, so maybe he could start.
Okay.
Hey there, Mr. Chair. Thank you so much for your time today. I'm happy to fill in for Senator Hester while she's troubleshooting coming over from EHE. So good afternoon, Chair Gazzoni, Vice Chair Rosapep, and members of the Senate Budget and Taxation Committee. For the record, Nathan Venkatraman, Chief of Staff for Senator Katie Fry Hester, presenting Senate Bill 246. So over the interim, a bipartisan group of senators have been working diligently to explore and support small business needs, increasingly critical due to the economic repercussions of the pandemic. The lack of access to capital for entrepreneurs, startups, and small businesses was identified as a key priority for that group of senators. Reports such as those from the ABLE Foundation a few years back recommended expanding early stage capital investments that would expand entrepreneurial opportunities dramatically, and this was prior to the pandemic. Senate Bill 246 will do exactly that and work to spur economic development within the state of Maryland through the recovery process, encouraging early stage investment throughout the state. The straightforward bill encourages qualifying investors to invest in qualified innovation businesses throughout Maryland by providing a non-refundable tax credit to prospective angel investors. This tax credit is equal to 50% of the qualified investment by improved investors to qualified innovative businesses not to exceed $50,000 for an individual or $100,000 for married couples filing jointly or for those filing through a pass-through entity. To qualify, the startup company must be in good standing and have annual revenue of $5 million or less, have been active in business for no more than 5 years, has not received more than $2,500,000 in investments, has fewer than 25 full-time employees, be headquartered and have a base of operations located in Maryland. It must also be an innovative business industry, which includes advanced materials and manufacturing systems, aerospace, agricultural technology, clean energy and natural resources, education, electronic device technology, health and medical technology and information technology, nanotechnology, and transportation and logistics. So today I'd like to share with you 3 reasons why we believe you should vote for this bill. Entrepreneurs and innovative startups have a track record of creating jobs and supporting economic growth. In 2015, startup firms less than 5 years old created 2.5 million new jobs throughout the United States, including right here in Maryland. This incentive will also help us retain talent in tech, healthcare, cybersecurity, clean energy, and the other innovative industries listed above. The Baltimore-Washington area receives more federal research funding than almost anywhere else in the country. However, many businesses within the state of Maryland that receive funding from the federal government subsequently leave the state in search of funding at critical early stages of business development. In Baltimore alone, it's estimated that nearly 30% of companies launched at some of the city's incubators leave to find their starting capital that they require. Third, we need to act quickly to help the startup community in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic. Between March and June of last year, startup companies saw a 44% decrease in VC investments as compared to the same 3-month period the year before. Without robust local financing systems, many startups could close their doors or leave our state in search of the support they need to get through these extraordinary times. In summary, the Angel Investor Tax Credit will help drive investment in startup small businesses around the state, create jobs, retain talent, and support a robust recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic. I would also point out Virginia has a very similar Angel Investor Tax Credit that also allows a cap of $50,000 per individual and has a maximum allowable credit statewide capped at $5 million, much like the provision of this bill. For those reasons, I respectfully request a favorable report for Senate Bill 246.
Thank you. I see the senator has arrived. You want to add anything? You're on mute.
I just wanted to apologize for missing my own hearing. I didn't get the message that we were starting, so I'm sorry.
No problem. Your able assistant handled it very well. Okay. Martin Rosendale.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members of the committee. Thank you for your time, and thank you for your work in most unusual circumstances. I'm Marty Rosendale. I'm the CEO of the Maryland Tech Council. We represent all the technology companies throughout the state. We have submitted written testimony in support of SB 246, and Nithin just did an amazing job describing the value and the benefit of the bill, so I can be brief. As Nithin pointed out, small to mid-sized growth businesses are top job producers. Access to the capital markets, however, remains a very significant challenge to those companies. The Angel Investor Tax Credit provides a number of things. It allows us to implement best practices that are seen around the country today. It provides incentives for needed angel investment and access to those capital markets. It supports company valuations, and it provides validation of state support for small to mid-sized businesses. So we request a favorable report from the committee. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Don Fry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Don Fry, President and CEO of the Greater Baltimore Committee. I'm pleased to be here in support of Senate Bill 246, the Angel Investor Tax Credit. Passage of this legislation would be a significant step toward growing a stronger 21st century economy and creating job growth in Maryland. It would also send a strong signal that Maryland recognizes the importance of our innovation economy. In July 2015, Forbes published an article titled, "Millennials Want to be Entrepreneurs, so why aren't they starting businesses?" In December 2018, The Atlantic published an article describing millennials being on track to be the least entrepreneurial generation in recent history. There are a number of reasons of why young people are not starting businesses, but the most commonly cited reason is the difficulty of acquiring capital needed to start a business when coupled with the amount of student debt that the younger generation has already taken on. But access to capital is a challenge not just for millennials that want to be part of the innovation economy, but it's been stated for all startups. Our state's ability to create jobs is closely aligned to the strength of the startup community. A large body of research suggests that new and young businesses contribute disproportionately to job growth. Angel investors play a very important role in the entrepreneurial community by providing much needed early stage funding for startup companies. The Kauffman Foundation estimates that angel investors provide up to 90% of the early stage equity that's not contributed by friends and family, and also tend to invest in a wider range of innovation than traditional lending sources, something that this bill provides for. State investment in an angel investment tax credit is consistent with one of the pillars of a report that the GBC created known as Gaining Competitive Edge, Keys for Economic Growth and Job Creation. In that report, it recommended strategic and effective state investments in business growth, investments to include competitive and effective tax credits, business and development incentives, and tactical initiatives to nurture private investment and industry growth. Passing the angel investment tax credit would be a smart investment for the state. It will deliver dividends in terms of economic growth and job creation for years to come. For those reasons, the Greater Baltimore Committee urges a favorable report on Senate Bill 246. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Fry. Looks like that was the last to testify on that bill. Does anyone have any questions for the senator or anyone who testified? Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Senator. Senator Pinsky.
Thank you.
Good. Good. You're labeled as Senator Pinsky now. You were Susan somebody a minute ago.
My my scheduler and relations person. I'm holding hearings, so I left my computer in the other room. So we're sort of dancing around.
I know. I'm supposed to come over to you in a minute, so I don't. I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to do that. But
well, we're going to break at 12:30, so it may be after 2. I'll get back to you and let you know when.
Okay.
Okay.
So your bill is 288 income tax carried interest.
That's correct. Mr. Chairman, also, one of our witnesses was actually signed up, and we have a confirmation he was signed up, Randy Patterson, but he didn't show up on the witness list.
Yeah, I'm here, sir.
Yeah, no, I understand. I'm contacting the chairman.
Yeah, we'll make sure we'll make sure he gets a chance to speak.
Okay, and Michael Kink is not available. So you have Erica Payne and Randy Patterson. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the B&T Committee. Senate Bill 288, you've heard before. Let me explain for those who are not as comfortable with tax policy. If you work 40 hours a week, you bring in revenue, you bring in salary, that's income. And you basically pay an income tax. And depending on what threshold of your income, you'll pay different rates. Now, the highest rate is 37% if you're making hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. On the other hand, if you buy stock or buy a house and sell it at a later point and make a profit, that's capital gains. So in other words, if you provide a service to someone, CPA, and you're making $100,000 a year, you'll pay income tax on $100,000 a year. If at the same time you bought a house, you renovated it and flipped it and made $50,000, you'll pay capital gains on that. That's generally the tax code, but we have one exception, and that is when it comes to hedge fund managers. What they do is they direct other people's investment. They form a partnership, and they're called a general partner. Now, what happens is the limited partners invest all the capital. The one thing the managers invest is their expertise. They provide a service, and I think that's very important. Unfortunately, in the federal code, there was a small carve out, a loophole, you can call it whatever you want, where they are taxed at the capital gains rate for this income based on the service they provide. If you or I provide a service as a consultant, as a this or that, it's income. But in this one slim category, there is a carve out. The financial investors, the people who put up the millions of dollars, are in one category, but because it's a partnership and the hedge fund manager is part of the partnership as a general partner, they've been able to come under this cloak of capital gains. What that means is instead of paying 37 or 37.9%, if they're making hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars, which they are, they will pay at a rate of approximately 20%. So the federal government is losing money because we piggyback our state income tax, the state is losing money. And if you look at the fiscal note, the Fiscal Services has said we're losing $44 million a year. $44 million a year. Now, in 2016, during the last election cycle prior to the one we just experienced, candidate Trump, candidate Hillary Clinton, candidate Bernie Sanders, candidate Jeb Bush all supported getting rid of the loophole. Obviously, it's 4 years later and that hasn't been done. Would I rather than deal with it on a state level, deal with it on a national level, and have the federal government get rid of that loophole? Absolutely. It would make life a lot simpler. But so far it hasn't been done, and I'm not going to bet the house that it will get done, given what I know about Congress and the influence of money. So what this bill seeks to do is put a tax on the difference between the capital gains and the income tax. And the bill calls for a 17% tax, a surcharge on those people who play this role. Now, you may hear from the opponents that it's going to put us in a negative situation, a competitive disadvantage. Well, first, you need to know the money these people are investing is not all in Maryland. It's all over the country, these general partnerships. And secondly, my hope and actually my belief is that if Maryland passes it, Massachusetts, New Jersey, New York will pass it soon after. And ultimately, because of the large states passing it, the Congress will be forced to pass it. So would I prefer not to have to do this? Yes. But the fact is, we have to do something. This is $44 million we're letting seep through our hands because a small number of hedge funds have pulled a hustle, essentially. They're paying 20% instead of 37%. So that's what the bill seeks to do. I appreciate your time. I won't belabor it. I think the fiscal note writers have it exactly right. Their characterization is, I think, on point. So with that, we can either I can answer questions or you can go to the other proponent witnesses. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think what I'm going to let you do, one of yours was, so my list is inaccurate too. So I will go back. I know you mentioned the names as Randy Patterson. Is that your witness?
And Erica Payne from the Patriotic Millionaires. If you want to have Ms. Payne go first and then Mr. Patterson, that would be great.
That's perfect. Ms. Payne.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for letting me talk to you today. My name is Erica Payne. I'm a resident of Chevy Chase, Maryland. I am the founder and president of the Patriotic Millionaires, a nationwide network of high net worth Americans, including several in Maryland, who share a profound concern about economic and political inequality in America, which has reached historic and destabilizing levels and which is the root cause of the social unrest we currently suffer and which culminated in the attack on the Capitol several days ago. This nation has been torn apart. Who has torn it apart? Well, in part, at least, it's financial elites like Maryland resident David Rubenstein, founder of the Carlyle Group, who built his fortune on access capitalism. His words, not mine. What is access capitalism? It's a fancy phrase for elites who rig the economy in their own favor by convincing lawmakers whose campaigns they fund to manipulate the tax code with absurd loopholes that have absolutely no credible intellectual justification whatsoever. This brings me to the carried interest loophole, the poster child for the intellectual and moral rot at the center of our tax code. This loophole allows fund managers a legal way to skip out on taxes by mischaracterizing their ordinary income as capital gains income. That loophole saved Mr. Rubenstein $50 million in taxes between 2011 and 2016, and it's the reason he was the subject of a major profile in the New Yorker called The Billionaire's Loophole, which is worth everyone reading. Mr. Rubenstein and his pals will say closing the loophole will harm investment. It won't. They claim they deserve a special tax break because they are job creators. That is patently absurd. Private equity investors destroy jobs more often than they create them. Let us never forget the Toys R Us debacle, which gave private equity firms hundreds of millions of dollars of fees, which they got a tax break on and cost almost 100,000 people their jobs. Mr. Rubenstein will say if we demand our millionaire residents here in Maryland pay their fair share in taxes, they will flee the state. But study after study shows they do not leave. In fact, when New York raised taxes on millionaires several years ago, the number of millionaires in the state actually went up. And frankly, if David Rubenstein and his friends who believe they deserve this special tax break want to leave the state because we require him to pay the tax rate the rest of us pay, well, Virginia can have him.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Payne. Mr. Patterson.
Yes, good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Vice Chair, and committee members. My name is Randy Patterson, Jr., and I'm the 2021 Maryland State Education Association Education Support Professional of the Year, or ESP. I live and work in Columbia, Maryland. Senator Gazone, I'm a District 13 constituent, serving my students at Stevens Forest Elementary School in Howard County as a paraeducator. I come in support of Senate Bill 288. Voting yes allows for an adequate, sustainable, predictable revenue stream to fund our public schools. It will help set up public education to be competitive as other careers. It will catapult recruitment and hiring and retaining good educators. In my role as ESP, I support the classroom teachers by reviewing, teaching, working with students in small groups, and building relationships during lunch and recess. Based on the numbers of students in the classroom, teachers may not be able to meet with each of them. We are often known as the glue that holds everything together. I have to work before school, during school, after school, 2 part-time jobs in order to make ends meet. Many of my colleagues are in the same situation. For years, educators have been doing more with less. This is your opportunity to change that narrative. During my tenure, I have seen great support professionals and teachers leave public education for higher paying jobs, specifically Black and Brown educators that are desperately needed. I am one of 2 Black male ESPs in my building, so I know firsthand the need for more Black and Brown educators. More funding would allow our students to look up and see someone that looks like them, that understands them and their mannerism. Representation matters. A yes vote on Bill 288 improves the quality of life for educators. When school systems have laid off due to budget cuts, ESPs like me are usually the first ones on the chopping block. We are in the same essential employees who were the first to go back into the buildings when the pandemic hit, or were delivering meals to students in the communities. On Monday, we all honored the late, great Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. He fought for equality, fairness, and social justice. Let's not just let those quotes we wrote on social media be just words. Dr. King said, "The time is always right to do what is right, and the right thing to do is to vote favorably on Senate Bill 288. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Patterson. Questions for Chairman Pinsky or his panel? Okay. Seeing none, we'll keep moving down the list. Michael Johansson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is Mike Johansson. I'm here on behalf of the Invest in Maryland Coalition. We are opposed to this bill. It's good to see everyone virtually. I do agree with 2 things that Chairman Pinsky said. Thank you. First, this would be better handled at the federal level. I think we all can agree that having a national policy is a better way to address this. We don't necessarily agree on the solution, but I do think he was correct in that statement. Secondly, I do think the fiscal note is very important. And I would direct you to page 4 of the fiscal note, which talks about whether or not the $40 million estimate is a reliable estimate. If you look at the top of page 4, it is like, this is the quote, "It is likely that state revenues will increase by less than estimated, as it does not take into consideration individuals altering behavior on the state level to avoid the tax. DLS anticipates a significant number of taxpayers altering their behavior to avoid the tax, but the extent cannot be quantified." Mr. Chairman, I've read fiscal notes for 35 years, and I began writing them 35 years ago before I joined the committee of staff. They rarely will be that definitive that tax policy can change individual behavior. Usually, they kind of take the opposite view, which is incremental tax change is unlikely to change behavior. But here, this is a doubling of the tax on this particular service to someone who's already in Maryland. And if someone chooses to locate outside of Maryland where the overall individual income tax is already less, it is more than a doubling of the tax burden. I think there's another major flaw with this bill. One, it's retroactive. Not only is it retroactive to all activity in calendar year 2021, but if these investments are typically held for 5, 6, 7, 8 years. If someone made a decision when investing in a Maryland business 6 years ago, and he's now at the point that these earnings are coming in the form of profits because the investment's finally making money, this bill, if those dollars are earned after January of 2021, would tax that transaction 6 years ago based on this new tax rate. So a deal that was made and the experts that analyze what a business is worth all that time ago never accounted for this type of tax change. Our client, he's signed up, Mr. Omar Rahman. He can't testify, but let me just give you just a couple comments that he was going to make. So he moved to the United States.
Need you to wrap up.
Yep, from Bangladesh when he was 11. He now lives in Howard County. He is invested in a Baltimore business that went from 3 employees to 200 employees right around Penn Station. His own business has grown to 21 employees, and he's chosen to invest here. He's the type of person, he's not a Carlyle Group person, that would be dramatically impacted by this and can obviously choose to invest somewhere else. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Love to see how many Howard Countyans are engaged on this.
They love this committee.
So then Justin Field looks like the next to testify.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I appreciate you providing the opportunity to testify today. It's a product of Maryland's public schools. It is a distinct honor to participate in the democratic process that I grew up learning about. I work for the National Venture Capital Association. We represent venture capital firms across the country, including in the state of Maryland. We do not represent hedge funds or large buyout firms here, just to clarify. Simply put, our members are investors in the nation's startups, investing in anything from a few people trying to bring a technology out of the lab with nothing more than a team, an idea, and a whiteboard, all the way up to companies scaling up to prepare for an initial public offering. Our members' work is generally focused in the areas of science and technology, including biotechnology, information technology, computer hardware, climate technology, and advanced manufacturing. And I'd love to associate myself with the comments of Senator Fry Hester's Chief of Staff, who I thought had a very good rundown of the impact of startup investment and startup activity on the state's economy. Venture capital investment in startup activity has actually been a bright spot in the Maryland economy. Total VC investment into Maryland-based startups nearly tripled over the last decade, creating thousands of jobs and making the state more competitive in an increasingly competitive global economy. This is great news for the state. A recent survey of VC-backed companies showed that 4 out of 5 spend 3/4 or more of their budgets on 2 activities: wages and research and development. To fine-tune this point, this means that most venture capital investment invested in the state of Maryland turns into either compensation or research investment at the company level. 2 of the most society beneficial things I think we spend in the policymaking circles a lot of time trying to figure out how to encourage more of. Yet this bill would levy a 17% surtax on top of the 5.75% top state tax rate on venture capital in the state of Maryland. If passed, this means venture capital activity would be taxed at a rate 400% higher than other business income in the state, and more than 7 times that of startup investment in the state of Pennsylvania. Simply put, this would make investments in Maryland startups regionally and nationally uncompetitive. In fact, the bill even acknowledges this burden because it singles out real estate investment for an exemption from the surtax, even though they have the same partnership structure that venture capital funds do. I understand the fiscal note estimates some additional revenue, and I thought that the previous gentleman covered that pretty well. But I want to make one more point. It's not just about where the partnerships are located, because we do believe that the biggest and most important issue is that the DLS estimate does not consider the impact of this proposal on Maryland-based companies access to capital, and the relative attractiveness as a home for technology-focused startups and growth companies. And this will be the most damaging legacy of this misguided proposal. The surtax effectively builds a wall between equity investment and Maryland-based technology companies in need of growth capital. It will cost the state 21st century jobs, the taxes paid by those founders and employees, economic growth, and tax revenues associated with startup and growth company activity, including, but not just limited capital gains taxes. I implore you to consider the long-term impact this will have on economic opportunity in the state of Maryland. We are moving, as we all know, from a manufacturing economy to a services and technology-focused economy. Competition is fierce and innovation moves fast. Building a barrier for Maryland-based technology companies to accessing the capital and expertise of venture capital funds would be a misstep the state can ill afford and one from which it may take decades to recover. So we hope we can set this aside and instead work with you on ways to encourage greater startup activity in the state of Maryland so we can continue to lead in a globally competitive economy. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Committee members, questions for the unfavorables? Okay. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
Okay. We have one more bill today, and then committee members, remember, we're going to need to leave this this Zoom for our 1 o'clock Zoom with Dan White from Moody's Analytics. So remember, you're just jumping off one and going on to another. Hopefully there'll be a couple minutes break in there. But that'll all be up to Senator Gallion. Senator, this is your bill, 294.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
We'll use tax exemption.
Thank you. We'll keep it as brief as possible so you maybe grab some lunch before your 1 o'clock. Good afternoon. For the record, Senator Gallion here with Senate Bill 294, Cecil County Sales and Use Tax Exemption, Federal Facilities Redevelopment Areas. A similar bill to this was passed in 2016 for Bethlehem Steel in Baltimore County. This legislation would provide an exemption from the sales and use tax for certain construction material or warehousing equipment purchased for use in a certain federal facilities redevelopment area in Cecil County. Little background, the Bainbridge property located in Port Deposit on nearly 1,200 acres was a formal naval training center which formally closed in 1976. The U.S. Department of Labor then used it as a Job Corps training center until 1990. The deed of the property was transferred by the U.S. Navy to the Bainbridge Development Corporation, which I'll refer to as BDC going on. That happened in 2000. BDC then contracted with MTPM LLC, whose partners are Kenneth Michael, the Patarakis family, and Richard Alter. They contracted with BDC to purchase and develop the property in 2004. They then learned in 2012 that there were environmental issues left over from the Navy's time at Bainbridge. A lot of time and money has been spent in attempting to get the Navy to clean up the property. The Navy has continued to push back without any progress until just recently, when Congress became involved and demanded that the Navy take action toward remediating the property. MTPM currently has 3 prospective industrial developers and are actively working together with BDC, Cecil County, and the town of Port Deposit for funding of infrastructure in order to make the first phase a success. In that regard, the first phase will consist of 4 buildings containing a total of 3.5 million square feet. Port Deposit has jurisdiction regarding zoning. All other development matters are through Cecil County. The mayor and town council, as well as the county executive and the entire county staff, have been actively involved in supporting Bainbridge. The town planning board has rezoned the entire property to industrial zoning in accordance with the U.S. Navy agreement, precluding any residential activity because of the environmental issues. The approximately 1,200 acre tract of Bainbridge, because of the recent Navy cleanup activities, is finally available for development after having lain fallow for over 30 years. However, since the initial phase of development requires all new adequate facilities, road improvements, etc., the first phase cannot afford to support the overall expenditures required to start up development. I had the opportunity a couple years ago to tour this facility with the other Cecil County Senator, Senator Hershey, and also with Senator Peters. And I would just like to thank them for both co-sponsoring this bill, and I respectfully ask for a favorable vote on Senate Bill 294. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Steve Cassard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll introduce Carl Roberts first, who will introduce our testimony.
Okay.
Chair Gazzoni, Vice Chair Rosapep, and members of the Budget and Tax Committee. It's nice to see many old friends sitting around on the screen this morning. Senator Gallion did a tremendous job in providing testimony, so lucky for you, we're going to be short and sweet. I am the chair of the Bainbridge Development Corporation. You created this body in 1999 because at that time, that property had laid vacant for 23 years. Now, all you do is move 22 years further. That property has remained vacant for 45 years. And Senator Gallion is correct. Just in the last 4 years, things are hopping. Things are moving, the equipment's on site, and good things are ready to happen for the town of Port Deposit, Cecil County, the state of Maryland, and the region. And with that, we request a favorable report on Senate Bill 294. And I'll ask our Executive Director, Steve Cassard, to take it from here. Steve.
Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Chairman Gazzoni and Vice Chairman Rosapep. I'm a part-time Executive Director, and I'm very much familiar with the Bainbridge property since my career in state service that spanned over 32 years. Very obviously, this is a unique bill, but this is also very unique circumstances. I would describe Bainbridge in terms of its scale as a sleeping giant in need of some help. As our Chairman Roberts described, the property being vacant for 44 years, and the recent progress that we've made with the Navy to address the environmental issues is a huge milestone. Now, as we're on the site addressing the issues and we are disturbing the soil and we're digging up things, this property used to be a city of 38,000 people in its heyday with 700 buildings. 500,000 recruits were processed through this site. And when the Navy decommissioned it, they tore down 640 buildings, which as a result created some of the environmental conditions in the soil, which we are now addressing. But as we address those and doing some sediment controls and soil erosion measures, and as we dig down, we of course find that this site is fraught with antiquated infrastructure below grade that service this site and creates site development to be extra expensive. It's been noted that our development partner by the senator that MTPM has prospect they're working with, and they're trying to overcome some of these challenges. Built out, Bainbridge in its entirety could support 7 to 8 million square feet of facilities. It would be restricted to commercial and industrial development. But that is not only an important economic factor for Port Deposit and the county, it is also, in my view, a regional project of regional importance. So as we are here to answer any additional questions on your behalf, we appreciate your favorable consideration and are happy to answer any questions you may have of us.
Thank you, Mr. Cassard. Any questions for the senator or this panel? Okay, hearing none, that concludes testimony on that bill, which concludes our hearing for today on bills. And again, we have about 15 minutes. Remember to exit this Zoom and re-enter on the one associated with Dan White. And we'll see you in